One of the most famous lines of the entire Jewish tradition is in this week's parasha, Parashat Va'etchanan, from chapter 6 of Deuteronomy, verse 4. Chant the Shema along with me. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. The articulation, the pronunciation, expansion on the word echad is to concentrate on the unity of the divine and to be sure that we say echad, one, and not acher, or aleph chet resh, instead of aleph chet dalet. The resh and the dalet look so close that the dalet's written larger in the Torah scroll itself, and we articulate that d, that dalet sound, so that we affirm God's unity, God's oneness. One way of understanding this chanting of the Shema is to connect us with the ideal and the divine idea of oneness. That unity can be achieved in a world of differentiated opinions and realities, the kaleidoscopic cornucopia of possibility, the realities we face in a very earthly dimension of difference and disagreement and altercation, and of seeing right and left, and of seeing just and unjust, and knowing deep in our soul level that truly all stems from God. How do we deal with that reality? How do we face that concept that all is contained with God, yet there seems to be such difference and distinction? This is worth contemplating as we chant the Shema each day of our spiritual lives. The Shema is chanted in the morning service at Shacharit, in the evening service at Mariv, and when we go to sleep at night. The idea for us individually, the Ramban teaches, is that we, when we chant Shema, are fulfilling a mitzvah. How is it that the Shema fulfills a certain mitzvah that is beyond just prayer? The Ramban points out that he sees the first of the 10 commandments as having been a mitzvah and not just a statement or preface on the various commandments that God lists. And so when God says, Anochi Hashem Elohecha, I am Adonai your God, God is saying, now go and do a mitzvah when it comes to recognizing that, testifying about me to the world, and internalizing the idea as a Jewish soul. Shema Yisrael, Gam Zo Mitzvah. It is the fulfillment of a mitzvah. Ki b'dibor anochi Hashem Elohecha. Because when God spoke on Mount Sinai and said, I am Adonai your God, Yihiyeh HaYichud. The Jewish people would need to bring together the idea of God within themselves and unify all the divine aspects that a person can identify as being part and parcel of Adonai. It's a direct testimony, a dut, a witnessing that needs to happen in the world, as Rabbi Natan said in our tradition, Mikan teshuvah laminin shehem omrim shtei reshuyot. There is a refutation to heretics who say that there are two different divine powers in the world. that for the good and that of the evil, that of darkness and that of light, that of severe judgment and that divine being who works only through compassion and mercy. In fact, God is all of that and more. God is complex and full of characteristics that you may even feel are difficult when it comes to standing together. But just like the complexity of human beings, God too is multifaceted and full of different characteristics that you must bring together. You must sense as a unity. You must connect to in a divine oneness. When we say the Shema, the Ramban explains, we are indeed unifying the name and the reality of the divine in our terrestrial existence. He links it to the next verse in chapter 6 as well. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you will love the Lord your God. V'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your being. He takes the two, your heart and your soul, and he explains that what a human being does, what a Jewish soul must do, is to bring both the level of heart, desire, and emotional reality, and the level of intellect and thought and one's mind, must bring those together to be certain that God is Ro'eh et Hakol, sees all and is the great shepherd, is Echad, is one in heaven, is Yotzer Hakol, is the creator of all. And so he says, Al Da'at HaMidrash, Halev Anizkar Kan, the heart mentioned here in verse 5 of chapter 6 of Deuteronomy, Hu HaKoach HaMitaveh, that is the seat of our desires. That is emotional life. That is Ratzon. That is our passion. Im Kain, and if that's so, B'chol Nafshecha, the reference to the soul, HaNefesh HaMiskelet, that is a reference to the rational mind and the divine ability to connect words, thoughts, and use the power of the mind to help reality unfold here on earth in our human capacity, much like God created the world and brings forth light and draws us into our futures. By the yichud, the unity of the world of feeling and desire and the world of intellect and thought, we lift up God as echad, as one, and understand God in all of the wonderful divine multidimensionality. Through this chanting, we fulfill the very first of the 10 commandments. And whether a person has an entire theology worked through, or can answer how it seems like divine unity is so far off, given all of the difference and disagreement in a worldly existence, we each day are required through this mitzvah to imagine the great unity on high, and potentially, if not practically, act on that in our everyday lives, not just during prayer, but in the hours we toil in the holiness of the everyday work we do. Shabbat is a wonderful time to cover one's eyes and to unify with Am Yisrael, with the God of Israel, and the world of passions and desires, intellect and mindfulness. Let's end again chanting the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai